Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're doing something kind of different and honestly, absolutely fascinating. We're going to dive deep into a very specific piece of source material by literally putting its title under a microscope. We usually just skim past titles, right? We just assume they're basic labels. But today, we're hitting the brakes. We're going to unpack how just a handful of carefully chosen words can actually construct an entire framework of human behavior. Before we even glance at the text itself, I want you to ask yourself a question. What exactly gives a habit value? Seriously, think about your own life for a second. Is making your bed inherently more valuable than, say, taking a walk? Like, by what metric? Keep this whole idea of assigned worth right in the back of your mind, because it's literally the absolute core of the material we're decoding today. All right, so here is our complete verbatim grounding text for today. Read it with me. Excerpts from The Daily Habits of High-Value Men. The Daily Habits of High-Value Men. Yeah, okay, it definitely sounds repetitive, but do not let that fool you. This phrase taps directly into modern internet culture, and we're basically going to treat it as our map today, exploring every single corner of its linguistic architecture. Moving into Section 1, Introducing the Source Text. So we're analyzing this text based purely on its structural framing. And that right there illustrates our first major concept, the absolute power of a title. Look, a title doesn't just sit there passively. It actively frames your entire expectation, and it sets a really specific, deliberate cultural tone right from the jump. By declaring what the text is about before you've even read a single paragraph, well, a title is actually already arguing a point. All right, Section 2, the concept of daily. Let's zoom in on that first crucial modifier, daily. It's defined as done, produced, or occurring every day. Obviously, it's a word we use all the time, right? But here it's doing some really heavy lifting. It implies this relentless, unbroken frequency. There is absolutely zero room for the occasional or the spontaneous. It's kind of like a ruthless Duolingo streak. No days off allowed. It demands a totally rigid adherence to the calendar. And by inherently framing these actions in constant, repeating units of time, 24 hours, 7 days, 365 days, the text suggests that unyielding consistency is a strict prerequisite for whatever comes next. It's not about what you do when you just happen to feel motivated. It's about what you do in an unbroken chain of time. The measurement of success here is inextricably tied to the clock and the calendar. Which brings us to Section 3, Understanding Routine Habits. So now we attach that intense timeline to an action. A habit is defined as a settled or regular tendency or practice, especially one that is hard to give up. Habits go way beyond just, intentional, in-the-moment choices. Once an action actually becomes a habit, it operates almost completely automatically. It essentially bypasses that part of your brain that requires intense decision-making energy. Think about the vital difference here for a second. Occasional actions? They require active willpower, motivation, and conscious energy every single time you do them. But daily habits, they form the subconscious baseline of your entire routine. By focusing specifically on habits rather than just actions, the source text is pointing straight to the very foundation of how a person basically operates on autopilot. Let's keep going. Section 4, Deconstructing High Value. Okay, we have now arrived at what is undoubtedly the most polarizing and honestly complex modifier in the whole text, the hyphenated phrase high value. It's defined as considered to be of great worth, importance, or desirability. Now, impartially speaking, applying an economic metric like value to a human being or even their daily routine is a highly specific sociological framing. It's literally borrowing the language of financial appraisals and applying it directly to human existence. The terminology here outlines a very clear theoretical progression. It goes like this. Step 1, an action is taken. Step 2, through repetition, that action solidifies into a habit. And step 3, that habit is subsequently judged, ultimately conferring high value onto the individual. It's practically a literal equation, implying that your worth is generated through this exact step-by-step mechanism. So the crucial point is understanding the heavy implications listed here. Value intrinsically requires an external measurement. It relies completely on subjective societal worth. And most importantly, it implies a hierarchy. Now, without endorsing this viewpoint in any way, we can objectively observe that this language inherently suggests a really strict social ladder. It's a ladder where personal worth is actively measured, calculated, and achieved through routine. Because logically, if there's high value, the language practically necessitates the existence of low value, right? Moving right along to Section 5, the focus on men. The final piece of our linguistic deconstruction addresses the targeted demographic sitting right at the very end of the phrase. By explicitly specifying men, the title radically narrows its scope. It firmly and undeniably ties these intense concepts of relentless daily habits and economic style value assessment to a specific gender identity. It suggests this formula is a deliberately gender-specific framework. And this naturally prompts us to consider a much bigger question. Why exactly does the text isolate this demographic? Does societal value change based on demographic framing? We really have to ask whether this specific framework of high value is uniquely constructed for men within this cultural context, or if the author believes this whole equation just operates differently depending on exactly who is performing the habits. Okay, let's wrap this up in Section 6, synthesizing the core premise. We have completely broken this phrase down to its studs. So now, let's bring it all back together. Returning to the exact text, the daily habits of high-value men, we can view it with totally fresh eyes. We see it now not just as some casual title, but as a highly structured argument. An argument about the frequency of time, the automation of human behavior, the measurement of personal worth, and the application of all these concepts to gender. The literal words on the page simply promise a list of routines. But as you can see, the cultural implication is so much vaster. The implication is an entire philosophy of categorized human worth based entirely on daily execution. It basically posits that humans can be optimized and then appraised based entirely on how they spend their automated time. Wild, right? It is just incredibly fascinating how one singular, brief sequence of words can carry such heavy, intersecting concepts of self-development and societal categorization all at once. The source material is brief, for sure, but the worldview it constructs is expansive, it's rigid, and it is deeply rooted in modern metrics of success. As we conclude this explainer, I wanted to leave you with a final provocative thought. Over the next few days, really reflect on the language and the frameworks you consume on a daily basis. When a text promises to teach you value, ask yourself, who ultimately determines the value of our daily habits? Is it the internet? Is it society? Or is it something you have the power to define for yourself? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating linguistic breakdown with me, and definitely keep questioning the frameworks around you.